First and foremost, I want to give a special thank you to my channel members, Toya, Byron, and Daniel. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. If you aren't a member of my channel, I suggest you sign up for uncensored, extended content that you get to see first before the main channel. Plus, for this story, there is some extra information on the mastermind of this crime that I'm only sharing with my membership. So if you like, sign up for the membership and tune in. Today, familia, we are headed to the beautiful island country of Jamaica, the home of the icon himself, Bob Marley, the home of dancehall and reggae, and known to have the best recipes for oxtails, ackee and swordfish, and jerk chicken. Jamaica is somewhere lots of people love to go as a vacation spot, wedding destination, or simply called home to the natives of the island country. And as anywhere else in the world, when there's beauty, there's ugly. Right now, as of December 2023, as I'm currently typing this script up doing my research, Jamaica comes in as the second country in the world with the highest rate of homicide after El Salvador. There's a population of 2.8 million people recorded to live in Jamaica, and for every 100,000 people, there's 45 homicides. Today's story will be diving into two that honestly should have never happened. TOSHYNA Patterson, whom I didn't see too much information on her background, so there's very little to speak to on behalf of how she grew up or her birthday and such things like that. As a matter of fact, there really isn't a whole lot of information on how she met the other people involved in this story either, so please bear with me if you find yourself asking, what about this or what about that? I probably asked myself some of those same questions. However, moving forward, what I do know is TOSHYNA was born and raised in Jamaica, growing up specifically in James Mountain with her relatives, which includes a twin sister. Eventually, she did move from James Mountain, but would often go back and visit her loved ones regularly. And based on her successful career, what I can say is she wasn't the type to sit around and wait for things to happen for her. No, she was quite ambitious, and it showed in her endeavors. I took a look at her Facebook page, and in her About section, she described herself as a, quote, jovial, charismatic, independent, innovative, ambitious, and determined young lady who is very outgoing and loves to socialize, end quote. TOSHYNA had her own YouTube channel called Let's Talk Pests with Tosh, and on this channel she only had 2 video clips on there from 2 years ago where she spoke during an interview about how she came into owning her own pest control company at approximately 25 years old called Chem Pest Company Limited. TOSHYNA said she never dreamed of coming into the pest control industry. However, she did used to work for a pest control company back in 2015, and there were some areas that were lacking within the company. So instead of sitting on her hands, she decided to take matters into her own hands and begin her own company. And she didn't have any knowledge in the field, but she knew with the right amount of support, she'd be able to succeed. And she was right, because at the time of the interview, she had already been in business for about 5 to 6 years. TOSHYNA spoke about the much needed pest control in food establishments, government establishments, schools, and in the landscape in general in Jamaica for people's homes, their gardens, and their businesses. Now, at some point, TOSHYNA met a man named Philip Paulwell. Philip, 61 years old, is the current member of Parliament for the constituency of Kingston East and Port Royal, and former minister of STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Energy, and Mining, in the People's National Party administration. During TOSHYNA and Philip's relationship, the two created a life together, a beautiful baby girl named SARAYAH Paulwell. Now, unfortunately, on the morning of Saturday, September 9th of this year, 27-year-old TOSHYNA and her 10-month-old baby girl SARAYAH went missing. They were actually kidnapped from their home at Gilmore Drive, Kingston 20, where their last sighting was approximately about 7 a.m. at the gate of their home, and they were never to be seen again. And once the news got out that TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH was missing, Philip did make a statement confirming that yes, his little baby girl and her mother had disappeared. Now, in cases like this, of course, as you know, the first person authorities look into is the significant other of the victim. So authorities investigated Philip, seeing if he knew anything about his baby girl and her mother's disappearance. But Philip said he knew nothing, and that was proven to be true as he was ruled out. Once Philip was ruled out, they decided to look into the people closer to him to see if they knew anything. Because you see, Philip already had a child, another little girl, an 8-year-old little little girl, and that child was with a U.S. Navy petty officer and culinary specialist who was assigned to a Miami recruiting unit, and that person is 34-year-old Leota Bradshaw. Leota joined the Navy in 2020 according to her service record provided to Task and Purpose. After boot camp and culinary aid school at Fort Gregg Adams, Virginia, formerly known as Fort Lee, Leota was assigned for 9 months to Electronic Attack Squadron 134 at Whidbey Island, Washington, a unit that flies the FA-18 Growler. She transferred to a Naval Reserve Center in Miami in June 2021 and to the Talent Acquisition Group 2 months later. According to Leota, she and Philip were in a relationship as she referred to him as her spouse. Leota was questioned about TOSHYNA and SARAYAH's disappearance. However, she too said she knew nothing of the situation and that the only communication she's ever had with TOSHYNA was via brief Facebook messaging. As rumors swirled around, the public was not buying it. The citizens of Jamaica felt like Leota knew something, but she just wasn't speaking to what she knew exactly. So, on September 10th, a day after TOSHYNA and SARAYAH's disappearance, Leota decided to make an official statement declaring her ignorance to what happened to the missing mom and baby. Leota stated, quote, "My name is Leota Bradshaw. I am a federal officer. I have a daughter with Mr. Philip Paulwell, and we are in a long-term relationship. I wish to state categorically that I have absolutely nothing to do with the disappearance of Miss TOSHYNA Patterson and her baby girl. The only interaction I have ever had with Miss Patterson is through a brief Facebook exchange. I wish to share the sequence of events leading up to my exchange with Miss Patterson. In May of 2023, my 8-year-old daughter with Philip was sent explicit photos, which were later followed by email threats and extortion attempts. The matter was reported to the FBI, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the Broward County Sheriff's Department Internet Crimes Against Children. They later reported the matter to the Jamaican authorities. The threats against our child continued for months as the authorities investigated. On Sunday, September 3rd, an email was sent to the Parliamentary Group making threats that personal information on Philip would be released to the public. They also made damning threats against our child. On Tuesday, September 5th, I received an email from Jessica Dean 568@gmail.com advising me that she has been trying to contact me for months on Facebook to inform me that Miss Patterson had a child with Philip. I spoke to Philip and he confirmed that he had a brief relationship with Miss Patterson and it is possible that the child was his, but he was not certain as a DNA test had not yet been done. Following my conversation with Philip, I searched my Facebook history and noticed in my spam chat messages from an account with the name Jessica Dean, who had the PNP logo as her profile photo. She said she had been trying to reach out to me since June to bring to my attention the fact that Miss Patterson's child was Philip's. This was the first time I was hearing about Miss Patterson and the child. I also noticed that Miss Patterson had searched for my profile on LinkedIn 4 weeks ago, and again 2 weeks before the emails came. On Tuesday, September 5th, I sent Miss Patterson a message on Facebook Messenger advising her that Philip had opened up to me about their involvement and the possibility that the child was his. I advised her that Philip and I would ensure the child is taken care of financially and a DNA test would be done to ensure that Philip was the father of the child. That was the only time I had any interaction with Miss Patterson. I have never spoken to her by phone, nor have I made any arrangements to meet with her. Any such reports in social media are lies and will be passed on to my lawyer for action to be taken in the days ahead. I have shared all information I have with the authorities, and I hope the investigation will lead to the safe return of Miss Patterson and her baby girl. As can be seen from my exchanges with Miss Patterson, there was no anger, but just a genuine wish to see that an innocent child is taken care of and not caught up between two parents no longer in a relationship. I will continue to work with the local and U.S. authorities to get to the bottom of the threats against my family, in particular our young daughter. I will continue to pray for the safe return of Miss Patterson and her baby and ask anyone with information to contact the police." End quote. Notice how Leota stated that her and Philip were very much still in a relationship and basically said that TOSHYNA was the side chick and got pregnant and the paternity of baby SARAYAH needed to be established, and made it seem like she was all in for playing stepmommy to baby SARAYAH. Keep that in your back pocket and we'll come back to those dynamics later. Now, there was a screenshot floating around of someone noticing that TOSHYNA had been active online after being reported missing and 3 hours prior to the screenshot being taken, which was odd because if she's missing, then when did she have time to be on her social media account, and who was on her account if that's the case? A missing flyer went out on September 11th 11th asking for any help towards finding TOSHYNA and SARAYAH, stating that TOSHYNA was last seen wearing a gray tube top with green sweatpants and baby SARAYAH was wearing a pink onesie. A reward was offered by Philip in the amount of 500,000 Jamaican dollars, which is equivalent to 3,215 US dollars. Well, a few weeks later, in early October of this year, 2 burned bodies were found disposed of in the Rockford St. Andrew area, believed to be TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH, but still hadn't been confirmed at the time. The people who heard of this story, especially TOSHYNA's relatives and the people of James Mountain, were devastated to hear that this happened. One unidentified man specifically spoke to the media, and he spoke in patois, but I refuse to butcher the beautiful language and accent, so I'll paraphrase what he said while placing his exact quote on the screen. The man basically said that when people heard about TOSHYNA and SARAYAH missing, they cried, and now that it was possible they turned up dead, it hurt them even more. He said TOSHYNA grew up over there in James Mountain until she moved, and she came from a very nice family. He said people are evil because what could a baby have done to hurt anyone? He said a lot of people couldn't eat or sleep well since all this had happened, and everybody were praying for good updates. A woman named Sonia Thompson, who identifies herself as TOSHYNA's cousin, stated, and I'm paraphrasing, that she's weak behind hearing of the burnt bodies that were found. She said the inside of her head felt cold, and then her whole body she felt weak. She said she cooked and God blessed her to eat, but she left all the food covered in the kitchen, speaking to her lack of an appetite. She said she couldn't believe that someone could do that, and how could someone hurt an innocent baby? Now keep in mind that at this time of Sonia and the gentleman speaking to the finding of the 2 burnt bodies, it still hadn't been confirmed that it was TOSHYNA and SARAYAH. However, Sonia said that the family was convinced it had to be the mother and baby. Sonia also stated how at first, when authorities showed pics of TOSHYNA and SARAYAH, it didn't dawn on her right away that she was looking at her own relatives. She said she remembered TOSHYNA from when they were children, and when she saw the pics, she felt like TOSHYNA looked familiar because she recently saw her at church, but it still wasn't clicking. But once she realized that the missing mom and baby was her own blood, she broke down. She said the last time she saw TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH was during Easter at church, and TOSHYNA was present with her twin sister. She said TOSHYNA and the baby were dancing and they were playing, and that was the last time she saw her, but she never thought that it would be the last time she would never see them again. So the bodies weren't confirmed at the time of Sonia giving her statement to the media, but at some point it was confirmed that the burnt bodies found was TOSHYNA and her baby SARAYAH. And come Friday, October 6th, 4 people connected to this heinous crime were swiftly taken into custody, and those 4 people were Leota Bradshaw and 3 other men who weren't identified just yet at that time. Deputy Commissioner of Police Fitz Bailey was the one who revealed this information, and he stated that based on the quote-unquote quality and potency of the evidence, that the suspects could be facing charges of kidnapping and conspiracy to murder, among other charges. He also said that TOSHYNA and SARAYAH were both brutally murdered, bodies were disposed of, and it was one of the most painful investigations for the team since recent times. However, the team of investigators continues to be professional and remain focused. Within the investigation, authorities learned that Leota Bradshaw referred to Philip as her spouse, as I stated earlier, alluding to the pair being married and still in an active relationship, leaving space for people to believe that she may have been a woman scorned after learning about her quote-unquote husband's infidelity, which is interesting when you think back to what she said in her public statement about actually knowing about TOSHYNA and her baby and being willing to help take care of SARAYAH as her own alongside Philip. So how did this conspiracy to murder even come about? Who actually killed TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH and why, even though I think the motive is pretty clear here? Well, from my research, it isn't clear how the plan was confirmed in terms of receipts. You know, it's not clear like if the phones were tapped or texts were combed through or maybe somebody told. However, according to the ODPP, which is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, apparently on Wednesday, September 6th, Leota flew from the U.S. to Jamaica and met up with her cousin, a man named Roland Balfour, and the 2 other men, Richard Brown and Roshane Miller, to hatch the plan of murder and TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH. These conversations were being had up until that dreadful morning of September 9th. The agreement was made under the direction of Leota Bradshaw for these men to kidnap and kill the mom and baby, as she paid the men a portion of the money up front, 100K Jamaican dollars, which is almost 647 US dollars, and she told them the rest would be paid once the execution was complete, and the remainder was in the amount of 400,000 Jamaican dollars, which is almost 2,588 US dollars. Now, on the morning of, it's said that Leota herself actually pulled up to TOSHYNA's home in a tinted SUV and forced them, TOSHYNA and SARAYAH, into the vehicle, where she then drove the mother and baby to the vicinity of where Leota was staying in Stony Hill to drop them off to the men who were ordered to murder them. Once dropped off, the men took both TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH to Waurika Hills, shot them, killed them, and then finished them off by burning their bodies and dumping them in the trash as if they were worth nothing. It's really wicked and disgusting to think men would carry on like this. Men who probably had children of their own, or at least relatives who are young children, didn't even stop to think, what if it were their own, you know? But anyways, the ODPP said that Leota was being charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnapping, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of capital murder. Her cousin, Roland Balfour, a 30-year-old assistant graphic designer, has been charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnapping, and misprision of a felony. Roshane Miller, a 29-year-old air-conditioned technician, has been charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to murder, 2 counts conspiracy to kidnapping, and misprision of a felony. And Richard Brown, also known as Richie, has been charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnapping, and 2 counts of kidnapping. Leota and her cousin Roland appeared in the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston on Friday, October 13th, by way of a voluntary bill of indictment. Prosecutors stated that Leota actually had just learned about TOSHYNA's baby SARAYAH with Philip 1 day before she flew down to Jamaica, which would be Wednesday, September 5th. They said, although TOSHYNA had blocked Leota from her social media accounts, it didn't stop Leota from hunting down TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH. Now, remember earlier how I mentioned that Leota stated herself she had a brief exchange with TOSHYNA, and it seemed to have been pretty amicable, just to discuss the paternity of SARAYAH and how they would move forward. Well, this was true. She did reach out to TOSHYNA to address the situation on Wednesday, September 5th. However, after TOSHYNA blocked Leota, this sent Leota into a rage. So she got on the first thing flying over to Jamaica the very next day to eliminate what she probably saw as her competition. On the evening of September 6th, the men went to TOSHYNA's address to scope out the area to study and see how they'd be able to carry out the plan. On Thursday, September 7th, they went to where Leota was staying to finish up any loose ends on the murder for hire plot and came up with the idea of Leota luring TOSHYNA and her baby out of their home. And that's how the morning of September 9th came about. Apparently, Leota called TOSHYNA's phone, and that's how she got TOSHYNA to come out of her home. The prosecutor told presiding Supreme Court Judge Justice Simone Wolf Reese that, quote, evidentiary material shows Patterson exiting her premises and entering an SUV parked at her gate along with her baby. Evidentiary material shows that she remained in this vehicle for over 15 minutes. The vehicle then drove off and left the area approximately 7:22 a.m. Patterson and SARAYAH never exited the vehicle prior to its leaving, end quote. Leota was described to have been sitting with her head bowed low and her eyes closed, changing her posture only when it ended to deliver piercing looks as the prosecution had made their statements. Her cousin Roland was described as appearing unbothered. Leota and Roland were scheduled to return to court on Friday, December 1st, 2023. So what did Philip feel and think, or even had to say about all of this? Well, Philip was absolutely heartbroken. Saturday, October 14th, a day after Leota and them's court date, Philip made a statement saying his heart was heavy with sadness and that he hoped all parties involved with TOSHYNA and SARAYAH's kidnapping and murder be, quote, punished to the fullest extent of the law, end quote. He said, quote, these past few weeks have been extremely difficult for me as I grappled with the abduction of my daughter and her mother. I am heartbroken that the worst has happened. I prayed unceasingly for their safe return. Anyone that can murder a mother and an innocent baby is unimaginable, and my heart is heavy with sadness. I'm praying for TOSHYNA's family, who I know are experiencing the unbearable grief and pain of losing their beloved daughter and granddaughter. As a human being, father, a lawyer, and legislator, I am hoping hoping that all who were involved are brought to justice and punished to the fullest extent of the law. I cannot comment on the investigations nor matters before the court, but I wish to thank the police for their tireless work." End quote. Phillips said he had been in constant dialogue with the police and has cooperated fully with the investigation. He expressed immense gratitude to the citizens of Jamaica who sent their prayers as well as their expressions of love, support, and solidarity for him and his family. A spokesperson from the Navy Recruiting Command did issue a statement to Task and Purpose, and they said, quote, "The Navy takes all allegations of misconduct seriously and is fully cooperating with appropriate investigative and law enforcement authorities. The matter is currently under investigation by Jamaican authorities and the NCIS, which is the Navy Criminal Investigative Service." End quote. According to the Jamaican Observer website, one of the men involved, didn't specify who, but one of the men involved who entered a guilty plea on Thursday afternoon of October 26th before the Supreme Court Judge Justice Lorna Shelley Williams. He pled guilty to 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of kidnapping. According to ZipFM.net, the man's identity was being concealed at the time for security reasons. However, his identity was eventually released, and that man was Richard Brown. The following day, Friday, October 27th, Roshane Miller pled guilty in the Home Circuit Court to 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnap, 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder, and 2 counts of misprision of felony. Both men were scheduled for sentencing on Wednesday, November 15th. And on the day of sentencing, Richard was sentenced to 30 years on 2 counts of murder as well as 1 year and 10 months for 2 counts of kidnapping, to be served concurrently with the eligibility of parole after 20 years served. Richard asked his attorney, Rita Allen Brown, to read a letter for him, supposedly showing some sort of remorse, I guess. And the letter stated, quote, "I just want to do the right thing. I want my lawyer to tell the family of the baby and mother and to Jamaican public that I'm very sorry for the loss of their lives. I want my lawyer to also tell my mentor that I'm very sorry for the disappointment. I hope one day everyone will find it possible to forgive me." End quote. Roshane Miller was sentenced to 7 years and 10 months each on 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder, as well as 2 years, 10 months each on 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnap, as well as a 1 year and 10 month sentence for misprision of a felony. When the people of Jamaica learned of the 2 men's sentencing, they were pissed. Rightfully so. They felt as though it was too light of a sentence for this gruesome act of murder. And I agree. A 10-month-old baby and her mother were literally shot and killed, bodies burnt to a fucking crisp, and all these men get is essentially a slap on the wrist. Any chance at ever living in the free world at any point in time for these evil entities is absurd, in my opinion. Now, as far as Leota and her cousin Roland, they're still awaiting sentencing. Their court date for December 1st came and went, and the judge hadn't had all she needed to be able to proceed with the sentencing. Judge Vinette Graham Allen remanded them until March 6th, pending the submission of a number of outstanding documents from the prosecution. During the proceedings, prosecutor Andrea Martin Swaby indicated that the outstanding documents include the forensic material and certificate as well as statements from investigators. Judge Graham Allen ordered that on or before January 31st, 2024, the statements from investigators must be submitted. The forensic material and certificate were ordered to be submitted on or before February 29th of 2024. One of Leota's attorneys, Deborah Martin, requested that Judge Graham Allen make an order for the transcript of hearing and sentencing because they are relevant to her client's case. The judge stated, quote, "The court has nothing. I have to understand the context in which I am working. I can't just make an order in a vacuum like this. No, I have nothing to assist me to understand that. The role of the court is to ensure that the proceedings are conducted in a fair and proper manner to both sides. That's my role. I can't conduct anything fair when I have nothing. This case management has nada." End quote. And so in terms of Leota and Roland's sentencing, we won't know anything until next year, unfortunately, but they are still in prison. Now I'm gonna move on to my thoughts, right? Although Leota referred to Philip as her spouse, throughout all my research in this story, not once did I ever see Philip refer to neither Leota or TOSHYNA as his wife, his significant other, his fiance, his girlfriend, or anything of the sort. So I cannot speak to his relationship to any of these women other than him sharing children with them. I can't say if he was cheating on these women, lying to them, or whatever. But what I can say is it's a shame to have to do another story of a woman rallying up crash dummy men to carry out a murder plot against another woman, and unfortunately an innocent little 10-month-old baby who had nothing to do with nothing, never even asked to be born into this piece of shit scenario. Yet before she can even reach an entire year on God's green earth, she was cheated of one of the biggest blessings that a human can experience, and that is life. I truly hate speaking on stories that involve babies and children because it crushes me to my core that any grown adult could ever bring harm to such innocence. And then to be men listening to a weak bitch over some money. Y'all really sat there and watched the lives of this woman and this baby leave their physical bodies behind the orders of a mad hoe. And then to add further insult to injury, burn their bodies? No. All of these people were not made in God's image, but instead in the form of Satan itself. Only demons could carry out something so evil, so heinous, so unimaginable, all over a man. A man who had not once spoken to his relation to you, Leota, the loser. And Leota isn't even a physically unattractive woman. She was successful, pretty in the face, had her ducks in a row. I'm sure she could have moved on and gotten with anybody else in this world with just as much pull and power as Philip. But I guess that possessive spirit took over, mixing that up with a fragile ego and demonic energy. It was only one way she saw fit to handle another woman potentially taking her spot. And I'm so angry doing this story. I truly am. I cover some wicked things, but when it comes to the kids, I just lose it. I don't know. I also think it was so sick and arrogant of Leota to come out to the public with a statement just one day after the murders of TOSHYNA and SARAYAH. It really does speak to the lack of having a soul. Didn't even consider her own daughter in all this either, because imagine how that little girl's feeling, knowing that her mother her baby sister, who she never even got a chance to meet, and her baby sister's mother. Now, how's she supposed to go on in life? And she about to miss the holidays with her mom because her mom is in jail. How will this affect her mental health as she grows older? That 8-year-old little girl, she was robbed by her own mother to even ever have a chance to get to know her baby sister, and that's really some wicked shit. And unfortunately, I can't show baby SARAYAH on the main channel because YouTube will flag me. But if you remember, where my content is uncensored, you'll see just how beautiful baby SARAYAH was. Oh my God. Just an adorable baby doll in human form, literally. I wouldn't be surprised if the inmates of either prison that the perps are going to would try to get their hands on all that were involved in this horrid crime. And so, at this time, all I have to offer to the relatives and loved ones of TOSHYNA and baby SARAYAH, as well as Philip, are my deepest condolences. Baby SARAYAH would have been turning 1 on November 2nd of this year. I hate that you have to grieve such a senseless loss. And I do pray that Leota, Roland, Roshane, and Richie all receive what God sees fit for them. I would say more, but I don't think God will be pleased with me if I spoke those words out loud. Rest in peace, TOSHYNA and SARAYAH. You both were so beautiful, and you will be remembered as such. You angels will never, ever be forgotten.